Hi, I'm Erin Lucy, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up everything that I read in February. It was a decent reading month for me, not great. There was a lot of stuff I didn't get to on my TBR, but that's just the way it goes. And I feel like just gotta not feel bad about it. Got some reading done. The first one that I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which has just been like so majorly hyped on TikTok and everywhere else, and I put a hold on it in as an audiobook from the library, and it came in, and it definitely made me think about hyped books generally, because I feel like me going into a book and it being super hyped up, like everyone loves, like my expectations are just so much higher. And I think that's kind of interesting because I definitely feel like my opinion on a book changes based on how hyped it was for me, and that's probably the case with other people. I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about kind of a lot for the past maybe like 6 months, especially with like these books that are just, everyone loves them, top of the charts everywhere. And yeah, so It Ends With Us is about Lily, and she meets this guy, Ryle, who is a neurosurgeon, and she's kind of in the midst of a lot of like, she's like difficult life things. There's a lot of flashbacks to her childhood and meeting this guy named Atlas, and kind of how she got to where she is, and like the kind of the traumas of her childhood. And it's also about her and this guy Ryle. I don't want to spoil anything, but that's kind of like the basic synopsis. My thoughts are, I feel like, so influenced by how hyped it was, because I feel like it was really good, and I honestly in the end would recommend it for sure. I think it's worth reading. I think it tackles some sensitive topics very well. I will post some trigger warnings below. But overall, really good. Highly recommend. I think it did the subject justice, and I think it did also, like, it was really relatively refreshing and tackled relationships also in a like realistic way. So overall, I think it was really good. However, I definitely feel like for me, it was not like blow my mind. And that's kind of what I expect out of a lot of these books. Hold on. Okay, so just like, yeah, I don't know. I might have felt very differently about it and like loved it more if it hadn't been so hyped up, which I think is just a struggle in general with like the book influencing sphere. Like I love getting recommendations, but it's just very interesting how like super hyped books, I don't know, they have a lot more to live up to for me, which is maybe like not fair, but just kind of ends up what ends up happening. So I liked it a lot, and I do think it's worth it to read, but I didn't think it was like 5-star blow my mind. There were also some like really weird things I think that took away from it for me. One is that like there's this thing with Ellen DeGeneres, like the main character just talks about her all the time, addresses her journal entries to her, and I don't know, I feel like it's way overdone. Like I just kind of took away from the whole thing. I think it would have meant more if like her journal entries were addressed like either to herself or like someone in her family who she cares, her mom. I feel like, I don't know, I guess it doesn't really make sense when she's younger, but I don't know, I feel like it was strange and a little too much for me. The other thing is like really small, but they also like, her favorite food ever is toast, and don't get me wrong, I love toast is great, but it's like bread and butter. It's the most basic thing, and I feel like they talked about it a lot, like how that was her favorite thing. I don't know, they're just like really small things, but like kind of took away from it for me a little bit. So yeah, great, really good, definitely would recommend reading it, but did not completely live up to the hype for me. Next, I read The Last Story of Mina Lee, which I am doing for another video that I wanted to do on reading from Instagram ads. So it was really funny that I got this as a recommendation on an Instagram ad, because it is like one of Reese's book club books, and it was really fantastic. It goes back and forth between this Margot and her mom, Mina, and their stories. Her mom was orphaned during the Korean War and came over to the US undocumented, and has a whole backstory that is devastating and heartbreaking, especially in like her whole experience in the United States is really heartbreaking, but definitely makes you think. And yeah, really interesting to think about. Definitely made me think about some very interesting things, including her aversion to wanting to like learn the language and totally be immersed in the US, because she just didn't feel like it was the most welcoming of spaces. And it's just all about her experience here and her relationship with her daughter, who grew up in the United States and didn't really know much about her mom or her backstory. So she basically is figuring out about her mom after she's passed away, and trying to understand her and realizing also how little she knew her. So there's some really interesting themes also about knowing and understanding your parents and family, where you came from. Again, it's like a really heartbreaking book, but it was beautifully written and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. So next is the one nonfiction that I read, which is Kindred, Neanderthal Love, Life, Death, and Art by Rebecca Wragg Sykes. And this I actually did an entire reading vlog on, and it was supposed to go up last week, but I got COVID last week, and so that just didn't happen. I didn't finish editing it, but I think I'll finish it and get it up next week. I did do like an extra little reading vlog during my quarantine, which maybe I'll get up this weekend, but yeah, I was bummed to not get this up. It was a good book. I have plenty of thoughts on it in that video. It is like nonfiction. It's very dense about where current research is in Neanderthal history, archaeology. I find the subject really interesting, just human evolution in general, and thought this was really interesting, but it's really dense, and I'm not sure I'd recommend it unless you're really interested in the subject. So yeah, that is Kindred. Then I read Olga Dies Dreaming kind of at the same time, and love this book. I think it was maybe my favorite, or tied for my favorite of the month. It is about Olga and her brother Pedro and their lives in New York City and DC. And their parents are Puerto Rican, and they grew up in this Puerto Rican part of New York City. There's a lot to do with gentrification of the area and relationships within the family and relationships with others. So Olga's a wedding planner for like the elite, and Pedro is a congressman. Their parents aren't really in the picture, but they were radical leftists. So it's really about Olga and Pedro's relationships with each other, with their families, with other people, their portrayal in the public, and how they kind of deal with that and interact with that, those competing ideas of what they should be, how they should be, what they should do, what decisions they should make. So yeah, it's really fantastic. Olga Dies Dreaming. The next one was Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, and this is a Greek mythology retelling about Ariadne and her sister Phaedra, and the story of the Minotaur, who is their brother, and Theseus, who comes to slay the Minotaur. And if you're familiar with the story, it follows the Greek mythology of these two sisters, what happens to them. I thought it was really good. It made me so like angry at men, to be honest, especially gods in this particular case, but generally men. so much betrayal and just like frustrations with how men interact with women and what women are to them, both men and god and male gods in these cases, like how they treat them. They're just some like examples, you know, that are really frustrating of just like women always paying for the sins of men, or like these mistakes of men. You know, like even though they were involved in a story, they're the ones who suffer, even though it was like the mistake of that man. And so if you want to be frustrated at men, but also it's really good, it tells like the story, the perspective of the women in this story, Ariadne and Phaedra. Also made me a little angry, but was really good. I think it was right up there with Circe. I think it did a really good job of retelling this Greek story. One more thing about Ariadne. I never really heard of it before, and then I read this book, and it started popping up everywhere, which I feel like happens a lot with things. But we've been watching the 3rd season of Dark, and I don't want to spoil that, so I won't say much, but the Ariadne, the play, comes up a lot. There's a lot of parallels. So I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny and kind of cool, but yes, highly recommend. I really loved it. Also, like, power to women, for sure, something that for me came out of that. Yeah. So then we have House of Sky and Breath. Yep, I went ahead and read this. Everyone's reading this, so I'm not even sure what to say about it at this point. I loved it. It's so good. I just recommend reading it. I've talked about it in other, I think my TBR for this year. I also this was in my reading vlog from quarantine, because I did read this over quarantine. It's over 800 pages. The one thing that I got out of this, maybe not unique, but that I took away, was that I think this series is my favorite of Sarah J. Maas. Like, I liked it better than A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I love that series. I think I don't know, the relationships feel a little more like realistic, but also there's like the fantasy aspect, and like the really intriguing aspects of the relationships. Anyway, I loved it. I won't say more, but I will say I went into it blind. Like, I didn't look at anything else, anyone else's opinion. I'm really glad I did, which is also why I don't want to say too much. I do not want to ruin it, but I just recommend going and reading the series. So good. All the characters are fantastic. Ugh, loved it. So, yeah. Then there's Rosewater by Tade Thompson, and this is a sci-fi where in 2012 this thing appears in London, this alien thing, and different countries react in a lot of different ways to this, and Nigeria becomes kind of like a prevalent influence politically. So basically, it mostly takes place in the 2050s and 60s, so it jumps time a lot, and I did listen to an audiobook, which I found it a little bit confusing, but basically, yeah, so different countries' reaction to this. It's about this guy, Cairo, and the part he plays in this. So basically, some people kind of develop these psychic powers that are linked to this alien thing that has arrived, and Cairo is one of those people, and he has particularly strong like powers to like enter into the minds of other people, know what they're thinking, and he uses that in a variety of different ways throughout his life. He starts out as like a thief, and then he becomes involved in government activities. So I won't say too much more. It does switch times a lot, always surrounding Cairo, but different points in his life back and forth, and I found that to be a little confusing on audiobook. Overall, I liked it. I would say it wasn't probably my favorite sci-fi, I think because I just found it mostly a little bit confusing, but I thought it was really interesting, and I'm definitely on a bit of a sci-fi kick in a lot of the books that I've been interested in lately, so I'm excited to read more. And I think I definitely would recommend it if you like that kind of story, like sci-fi, futuristic, some sort of alien life type thing. And it's the first in actually a trilogy, the Wormwood trilogy, which I'm not sure. I'm not going to read the second and third right away, I don't think, but I think eventually I would want to figure out what happens. So yeah, Rosewater. So just one more that I finished just on the last day of February was I read a manga, which I haven't read in a really long time, but Spy Family. I think, I can't remember where I heard about this. Throne of Pages, I think, is her YouTube. It's so cute, and it was a really fun read during quarantine. I just wanted something light like that, and I had mentioned I was kind of struggling with reading this month, so this was like a nice, fun, really quick read. It's very cheesy, but it's really good. I thought it was super cute and fun, so yeah, Spy Family. Anyway, that is what I read in February. Not as many as I was hoping, but the other thing I've been really trying this year is to, you know what, the only person truly putting the expectation on how much I read is myself, so just gotta let go and be happy with what I have read. I am in the middle of some other ones right now. Black Cake, which I was really hoping to finish for this month, but have not. I've just kind of barely started it, and I'm already loving it, but that will hopefully be my first read in March. Yeah, other than that, hope you're having a great day. Thanks for watching, and I would love to hear what books you read in February. So, bye!